Well, hello, and welcome back. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do this live for some technical reasons, but I'm AJ O'Neill, and I am your instructor for this session of Beyond Code. And today I've got with us Brent Knudsen, who is a student at MTech, you said?
Yes.
Currently
hmm
doing kind of similar to a bootcamp program, and we're going to be discussing for loops and kind of breaking it down and trying to overcome any of the confusion or things that might be difficult to understand. So what I'm going to do to get us started, Brent, is just put out a loop here that is a loop. So you'll notice normally when you have a for loop, you put stuff in it, and you can have empty for loops. I've put a semicolon here, which means that there is the initialization. I'm leaving blank, so I'm just going to call that init, comment that out. So this is blank, and then the condition or the check, I'm leaving that blank, and then the, I don't know what to call this. It's like the last thing that happens, which is generally an increment. So I'll just shorten this out like that. So we're leaving the initial condition blank, we're leaving, or the initialization blank, the condition check blank, and the incrementing slash what gets done after blank. And we're just going to build this out from just a blank loop. So if I did nothing else, this loop would go on forever. This would be the equivalent of while true. In fact, I'll go ahead, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to run this, and nothing is happening. And if I waited long enough, it would just start, my fan would start spinning because my computer would be busy doing absolutely nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have this count up to 10. So I have an initializer, I is equal to 0, and this could be any number. It doesn't matter. It's just a convention to use I or J or K or N or X, depending on what the situation is. So I'm going to go ahead and call this I. So I can initialize a variable before I go into a loop. There's no particular need to initialize it inside of a loop, especially not in a language like JavaScript, which I can go into why, especially not JavaScript in a minute. But for now, let's just leave it at, I've got an initialization here, and then at the first thing that I want to do in my loop is to check for a condition. So if the purpose of my loop is to count up to 10, then I want to say if let's say if 10 is equal to I, or maybe the better thing to do would say if I is greater than 10, then we're just going to break. We're going to break means we're going to stop the loop. And so I'm going to put a console.log down here and say done. I will put a console.log up here and say begin. Begin. And then we'll put a console.log right here in the middle, and we'll print out whatever the value of I happens to be. So I'm setting it to 0. I'm checking if it's greater than 10. I'm breaking if it's greater than 10 because we want to stop at 10, but we want to print all the way out to 10. So technically, this loop will run 11 cycles because it'll start at 0. Or I could start it at 1. That would, and then it would only run 10 cycles. But we'll have it run from 0, and I'll actually do greater than or equal to 10 so that it only runs 10 cycles, so it'll stop at 9. And then the last thing that I'm going to do in my loop is I'm going to increment my variable by 1. So I is equal to 0. We check if I is greater than or equal to 10. If so, we're break, we're done. We do whatever we need to do, which in this case is just going to be showing the counter. And then we increment is the very last thing we do. So first thing, before thing, last thing. So does this right here, all on its own, does this make sense?
Yes, you instead of putting the conditions inside the parentheses before or after the word for, you're putting it inside of the code block.
Yep.
Is that what you're doing?
Yep.
Okay.
And then I don't know what to call this other than last thing. So yeah, that's what we're doing here. And the reason for doing this is just to show typically a for loop as constructed in the way where there are items inside of these parentheses. And these semicolons mean end of statement, end of statement. It is possible to have an empty statement. It is possible to have a line in a program where the instruction is do nothing, or the instruction is to not run an instruction. So that's essentially what we're doing by putting a semicolon, is it's going to do everything up until the semicolon is the first instruction, everything up until the semicolon is the second instruction, and everything up until the end of the check, the loop values here as the third instruction. And in this case, we're just saying do nothing. So the initialization we have coming before. The check is the first thing that happens in the loop, and then the incrementing is the last thing that happens in the loop. And this is the non-shortcut form. This is exactly what a loop is doing. So any thoughts on that?
No thoughts on that. Just pretty simple.
So if I take this and move it inside, this may be the way that you're used to seeing a loop constructed.
Yes, that's how I'm used to seeing it.
And the only difference between the two is that this one, oh, whoops. Now I need to reverse this around the other way. Because before we were checking how do we know when to stop the loop. And in this case, we're checking how do we know when to continue the loop. So the check is the opposite. Before, if I'm over 10, if I'm over or equal to 10, I need to stop the loop. In this case, if I am less than 10, I need to continue the loop another iteration. So that right there is just shorthand. We're saying what should happen before the loop ever runs, what should happen as the very first instruction to the loop, and what should happen as the very last instruction in the loop.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and run this just so we can see it. And then we get from 0 to 9. So is looking at it from that perspective broken down, does that give you any more clarity over where you were at before? Or
yes, it does give more clarity, for sure.
Cool. So do you have anything else that you are wanting to understand better about what the loop is doing?
No, I just the only thing I want to see is its application to manipulating more information, I guess.
All right. Can you give me an example to go from? And I can construct some arbitrary data if you can kind of give me a scenario that you're familiar with. Or do you need me to come up with that? Is that part of where you're struggling?
No, there is a little struggle there, but I think I can come up with something.
Okay.
Just give me a second here.
Yep.